The missing ingredient for so many people's success is like desperation. My sense of desperation was if I don't pull something together, I've got to go home. I can't, do anything else apart from make money.
We have James Smith here, an educator, a speaker. You've written 3 books.
I wasn't obsessed with money. I very rarely even would consider myself an entrepreneur.
How did you start to see it all sort of play out?
Like when you position yourself in sales or marketing, you actually have to put like a narcissistic hat on to really like ramp up your self-confidence. I'm able to portray the person I need to be in situations rather than...
If you were to give the keys to the queendom, that one key, what would it be?
Welcome to the queendom.
And we're here with keys to the queendom. I'm actually so fucking excited to be introducing you, legend. We have James Smith here. I'm going to introduce you as an educator, a speaker. You've written 3 books and we're just so grateful to have you here. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's nice to do a podcast with someone on the pretty much nearly the same time zone.
What's the worst one you've done?
I had to get up at like 1:30 in the morning and it was with James Clear, who wrote like Atomic Habits. So I'm having like a can of White Monster at 1 in the morning to stay awake. I was like, oh, could he do this time? And they're like, no. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do 1:30 in the morning. That's no problem. And then I went to bed at like 2:30, amped on caffeine. It was the worst.
I would have done anything to have him on my podcast, to be honest. So,
well, he's probably, do you know what? He was a very good guest. But you can tell when someone is being slammed with like PR requests from their editor, like their publishers. And there was a slight sense that maybe he was a bit over it after about an hour. And I was like, okay, well, thanks for coming on. Bye-bye.
Do you ever pre-plan like these type of episodes with someone like that? Or is it just go with your gut intuition? Obviously, PR is a bit different.
Sometimes, like, for instance, I did one with Lane Norton the other week and I was like, okay, cool, better plan this. I got an iPad, got like 12 talking points and we covered none of them. Like when we got going, we were completely fine. Not to say that I didn't think Lane would be a good conversation, but there were some actual genuine points. So if the conversation paused in any realm, I would have easily been like, oh, so semaglutide, let's talk about it. But we just didn't stop. So I think that now from doing podcasts for quite a lot of years, I actually find that everything someone says can lead on to something else so easily. And I think that when things do get pretty disjointed, it can really affect the interview. I did one in London maybe about a year ago, and the guy would be like, so what do you think of this? And I'd answer, and there'd be like 10 different tangents that conversation could have gone on. He's like, yeah, so what do you think of Andrew Tate? And I'm like, what? Like, where's this going? You could tell he'd obviously pre-decided the snippets he was going to put on YouTube. And then he just asked me the questions so we could clip it up and put it there.
It becomes like a robot thing as well. And I find then it just doesn't become as natural and present. I mean, I've written notes here and I'm like, bring dog up, bring books up. But I think you're right. Like it needs just to be fluid and really organic with the listeners as well. I did want to bring this up because I was actually going through our conversations on Instagram. And I just really want to say how proud I am of you because it's one of the biggest things. I think it's so important to acknowledge people's success and growth, and you are an inspiration to me. I think it was the 7th of May, 2018, something had happened. I think it was something to do with your app or your book. And I had said to you, congratulations, well done, I'm proud of you. And you had said, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, that definitely seems like something I would have said back then. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. I mean, if I could use one adjective to describe it, I'd just say it's weird. But I've come to realize maybe in the last year that I'm hyper competitive, and I didn't even know this in my 20s. I didn't even quite know that I was, my way of dealing and managing with these kind of emotions surrounding success is that I gamify everything. So in some respects, I treat a lot of arbitrary numbers like high scores, and it helps me manage with it. I'm definitely, now I've hit my 30s, I'm starting to reflect on why I am like I am. But, back then I probably was like, I'm not where I need to be. But then now I'm probably like, oh, I've probably gone a little bit further than where I'd actually want to be. I actually remember saying like, when I hit 100,000, like that's my lifetime goal, 100,000 followers. And I actually thought that'd be on Facebook. And then Facebook did come first, but then Instagram. And then suddenly in reverse, now my Insta's bigger than my Facebook and now my TikTok's bigger than my Insta. But yeah, it's interesting. Are you familiar with the hedonic treadmill?
Is that the one? Actually, I don't think so. I could say something completely different. Is that where you're standing up?
It's got a few different connotations, but in essence, thank you. I've just been delivered
Some drinks.
Fantastic cup of coffee.
I need mine.
So in essence, so many of us are guilty of setting things in the goal or objectives to come up that we know will make us happy, whether it's a watch or a car or something materialistic, maybe even like a handbag. You're like, right, if I get 10 grand in sales, I'm buying that 10 grand handbag. And then the second you get it, you enjoy it, but straight away you're like very soon numb to it. And you need to set the next thing. You're like, cool, now it needs to be 100K. Now it needs to be a brand new car. But although deep down we know when we accomplish those goals, we're going to feel very numb, we still do it and we're still driven by it. And there's kind of this nice satisfaction in knowing that you'll never be satisfied with where you get to. And I think that only a few people can truly understand that. And it's like, I think if people ask me what makes me happy, it's probably the fact that I'm bitterly disappointed with anything that I've produced. And like, I can sit back and go, look at all the things I'm doing and just say it's not good enough. But that's what creates motivation inside my head.
I have to share this just because my background's from dancing and I've been in that competitive world for a very long time. And my dad, he's German in the military. So for him, it was like, if you're not number one, you're a failure. So I've always had this sort of, I guess, competitive drive. And if I never reached that certain goal, I'd never be the best. But then now it's kind of been like, what can I do more? What can I do more? What can I do more? And it's beautiful you say that because it kind of reminds me of the documentary of Conor McGregor. You know, have you watched that?
Yeah.
I judged him before I watched that. And now I was like, wow, I should have completely really got to know him more in a level of athlete, like his athlete mindset, but his obsession was my biggest thing. So my question to you, my legend, is what you're doing now an obsession because you love what you're doing or you strive to be better every single day?
I think, yes, in many respects, but like, I think if someone had a genuine obsession, it would be all they do every day. For me, it's like, okay, today I'm going to allocate 4 hours to hard work. No more. And then maybe 2 hours to playing PlayStation later. But I suppose this hyper vigilant competitive streak is about maximizing my time spent invested into something and then the potential long-term benefits from that. And Conor McGregor, in that documentary, they definitely left out some of his flaws where he does drink too much, he does party too much. But then whenever you think that you're being given this like half of the argument that makes him look better than he is, you're like, actually, he's fucking human. You know, he's just a normal guy from Ireland. If any other guy was getting smashed, getting on the bag, you know, but then being a good father and providing for his family, you'd be like, that's fine. But when he's one of the most accomplished athletes in the world, they're like, oh, he's got a drug problem. Oh, he's got a booze problem. But at the end of the day, what I really admire about him was his conviction in like, I always say this to people are smarter than you think and they can tell when you're bullshitting. There's not one flinch in his mind where he talks about, he doesn't worry about losing, doesn't worry about adversity. He just sees himself as a champion, as like a winner. And I really, really like that myself as far as obsessing. Like I say, as far as like the gamification of things, one thing I'm really big on at the moment that I'm loving is YouTube. And I love the analytics that I'm being fed on it. And like, whenever I see any of my friends that are in the creative space, I'm like plaguing their mind with like, okay, cool. You need to, like Sonny Webster, I was chatting to him this morning.
How is he?
I said to him, he's good. But like, he was like giving the YouTube a little bit of a go, then he dropped off. And as someone who's dropped off it for years on end, and finally found my feet with it, I said to him, I'm becoming obsessed with retention, right? This is like my new thing at the moment where I'm trying to make videos that educate, inform people, but I want to retain them. I want to remove every opportunity someone has to leave a video. And now that's my obsession, right? So I'm spending my days looking at how to use Premiere Pro, how to introduce keyframes, how to put pattern interrupts, how to implement B-roll, all of these things. Like, when do I put text on the screen? When do I not? When do I do this? When do I do that? And sometimes I'll spend like an hour of my day learning. Like in iMovie, there were real simple ways to do stuff, but it wasn't good enough. In the last year, I've started using Premiere Pro. I was like, what the fuck is a keyframe? Now I'm using keyframes. I'm like, oh my God, that looks so much better. That's going to retain people. So I'm waking up and I'm screenshotting my retention and I'm sending it to my friends that aren't doing good enough. And I'm like, I'm wanting more from them. I want competition. I said to Sonny, I was like, it'd be really nice to have someone hot on my heels who was like, you know, putting me under the cosh. I was like, I need a friend to compete with. Like, do you know Paul Alima? So he's on socials as Alima Omega, and he's like my 6'4" Nigerian Irish mate. And yeah, and he does all of his like comedy skits and whatever. Like, there was a time he had 500,000 on TikTok, and I said to him, I'm gonna race you to 1 million. And he comes back, he's like, it's not a competition. I was like, it is a competition. I was like, it is. Then when I hit 1 million, I was like, I fucking got you. And he's like, I'm not racing you, mate. You're my mate. I want to see you do well. I was like, whatever. Then the same on YouTube. He's dominating me on YouTube. I'm like, I'm going to race you to that gold play button. He's like, mate, it's not a competition. I actually think in my mind, I set competitions for myself, like with people, and they don't even know they're in it sometimes. When I was like early on Facebook, I had like a top 5 list. I had Kayla at the top. Then I had some British influencers, and like I remember having like Mark Coles, Phil Graham, like all of these people in it. And I'm there making content. I'm like, how can I overtake these people that don't even know I exist? I think
weird people are the ones that succeed. I always say that. We're all a little bit weird and special. So the competitive nature is good for you when it comes to obviously your goals and ambitions. Has it ever faltered you at all with anything in life?
Yeah, I suppose one thing that I've really got to help me manage it is jiu-jitsu. It's like a real grounding effect. Like, you can go into your room and make good videos that get, you know, there's so much in your control on social media. I can do like a 4-hour edit. Like, you know, I'm like, that's going to do well. When I compete in jiu-jitsu, you're really exposing yourself to the highest highs and the lowest lows, because so much of that is out of your control. You don't pick your opponent. You don't know how good they are. You don't know how much they've prepared for it. So when you beat them in front of your team, in front of your crowd, you get the highest highs. But when you don't perform and you lose, you get the lowest lows. So that's something that I'm kind of grateful in some respects, because if I don't perform the way I want to on the mats in a competition, I'm borderline low. I'm low mood the next day, but I need that. And I think one of the things that I've definitely learned from the sport and in the last few years is how great a loss is for your attitude. And there are so many people, probably high achievers now, that love jiu-jitsu because it implements forced losses into their life. Because when you get like a certain amount of income, let's say after you're over 120 Australian $1,000 a year, or maybe like £65,000, so many of your problems in life go away. Suddenly, if you start to see like an upward trajectory in your business, you start to be surrounded by yes men or yes women. You suddenly then partner with only people that support your ambitions and your goals or whatever. And so much of the hardship of life dissipates, and you get to live in a very strange kind of existence, because for so long, you know, think of like primitive human minds. It's very rare that 90% of your problems would have gone away. You know, for a short select few of us that, especially in the fitness industry, we work less and we accomplish more than so many people before us. And it's hard for our minds to like quantify that. So jiu-jitsu, I think, is a fantastic one, because I get to points where my life's getting comfortable and I go compete, and I'm like, I get nervous the day before, but I'm like, if you win, you'll be happy. And if you lose, you'll be happy. Because if you lose, you're not going to skip training. You're not going to fuck around. That day that you didn't want to train in the gym, you're probably going to be better motivated to do it. So I think I've created like systems in my life that incorporate ups and downs, and both ways that things can go still push me in the direction of doing more.
There's so much that just came up for me, Legend, but I really want to go into, I guess, more in the journey when you began in the fitness space, and we'll touch base on like your circle as well and quantum, because that just turned me on. Because as well, I don't know if you know, I've veered away from fitness and I'm helping people in the business space. I want to be a speaker too, like yourself. Did you foresee all of this kind of coming up when you started as a personal trainer? And advice to anyone listening right now, when it comes to really taking on that entrepreneur journey, you know, don't just stop just being this one identity. How did you start to see it all sort of play out?
I think if I take you back a few steps, like my parents are very, like my dad's really quiet, introvert, not aggressive. Like there's, you know, wouldn't say boo to a goose, whatever. So I think that when I was younger, I definitely wanted to be like the man of the family. Then he'd done well. He weren't like super well off. Like, my parents have still got a lot of debt, but my dad used to pay for my car insurance, bought my first car, which was like $4,000, but still. Then there'd be times that he would service it or fill it up with petrol. So like very early on, I was like, right, my dad's been the person in my life that's kind of looked after me, but not spoiled me. So I was like, right, I want to be that person for my family, my friends when I grow up. So I wasn't obsessed with money. I very rarely even would consider myself an entrepreneur, but I like having money because I want to be able to fulfill those duties, let's say. So I didn't have much money when I was growing up. My mum and dad were like, you can have, when I went to university, they gave me like $200 a month. They were like, that's your allowance. Anything else, you need to get a job. Then when that allowance ran out, they were like, right. My dad actually told me to sign on the dole when I was like 20, 21. So to go on benefits. I was like, Dad, I'm not going on benefits, you know? And he was like, yeah, I've paid tax for 45, 50 years. You know, that's what it's there for. So I ended up getting a job in door-to-door sales in the UK in winter for a gas and electric company. So I was literally just knocking on doors, trying to get people to go from their existing supplier to the one that I worked for. But because I was so driven to want to earn money, like I was fine with it. My sales rate was 1 in 100. So I'd have to knock on 100 doors to make a sale. I also worked in shopping centers as the person that needed to stop people to sign up for things. I used to get $14 commission for each one, no base rate salary. Then I worked in cold calling environments in in an office, and people thought it was hell that I was making 100 phone calls a day to cold audiences. I was like, guys, I'm warm. I've got a toilet. You know, I can use the kettle during the day. I was like, people in there are like, this is shit. I was like, this is great. You don't know how cold it was knocking on doors. And like, I would have to wear like suit trousers and like a fleece and like a shirt and a tie and stuff, and then a little NPower badge. But if I was knocking on 100 doors, there's like no toilets. No one let you use a toilet. I'd have to piss down an alleyway like between sales. So when I moved to an office, I enjoyed that. But like when it came to sales, I don't think it's so much about competence. It's about drive, because if you want to make that sale, you don't even need to be a good salesperson. You just need to be persistent and at the same time have like some empathy for the other person. You just a bit like being chatted up by a man. Let's say this for yourself. It's never being chatted up that's the problem. It's the way they do it. If someone's polite, someone comes over, hey, you know, I don't know if you have a boyfriend or not, I think you're really attractive, would like to find out whatever it is. If they were polite, you go, oh, that's a really nice interaction. So I think the same with sales is if you can do it in the right manner, even if they're not interested, it can be a pleasant interaction between the two. So even going back before that, I got tested when I was younger for like dyslexia, dyspraxia, but I was disregarded from all of the tests I did with an educational psychologist because of my verbal competency and my reading competency. So there's like a lot of things to kind of unpackage here, but I've always been able to speak pretty well. I think my brain and my mouth have been quite close together. So then when I became a PT, the sales process was never difficult because of the amount of hardship that I'd gone before. And again, a lot of PTs were like, oh, you know, got to walk the floor, got to talk to people. I was like, motherfucker. I was like, I had to walk door to door in Gloucester in winter when it's raining to make sales to people that didn't want it. I was like, now I'm in a gym full of 2,000 people that all want to share the same goal. I'm now qualified to give them help. And not only that, when I make a sale, that money goes into my bank account, not some energy conglomerate. I was like, this is fucking taking candy from a baby, you know? And I think so many people as coaches, they look good, they train, they can get themselves in great shape, but they don't look at a business as a whole as having these different remits of sales, marketing, HR in some respects. And because I'd come from that background, I appreciated how difficult it was to make the sale and market. It was a massive white space that people overlooked. And it's like dirty connotations with sales, dirty connotations with marketing. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you need to bridge that gap. And I just don't think that people really did. And again, when you position yourself in something for sales or marketing, you actually have to put like a narcissistic hat on. You have to put like a self-obsessive hat on. You need to really like ramp up your self-confidence. Even if you're going to approach a woman or a man in a bar, you need to do the same. And so many people aren't willing to do that. And then when it comes to public speaking as well, I've often said in the talks, you know, the reason I enjoyed the third book is I wouldn't actually say I'm a confident person. I've just got a very good relationship with failure. But not only that, I'm able to portray the person I need to be in situations rather than the person I am. And I think that people need to take that on a bit more. They're like, oh, I'm a bit shy. Don't like putting myself out there. I'm like, well, do you want to fucking go back to recruitment? Because if you do, keep that fucking attitude. But if you want to make something of your life and provide for people around you in the future, you're going to have to step into the shoes of not who you are, but the person you need to be for this situation.
Hey guys, real quick. Have you ever been stressed out or stuck on a problem you just can't seem to figure out, and then a friend or a mentor comes along with like a fresh perspective and shows you a solution that completely changes the game for you? I'm smiling right now as I say this because I know I've had a ton of these moments while building my businesses and remembering back to all the people I have been helped by, which gets me so excited. So I want to pass on the information here and give you guys a favor to build this Queendom community. You know, whatever platform you are listening on, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and tune in every Wednesday, because you just never know when you will hear that special something that completely changes the game for you. And when it happens, make sure you leave behind 5 stars so we know our efforts are making an impact. I love you guys. Let's get back into it.
So my mum was an Avon lady when I was a little girl, and just going on the topic of dyslexia and speaking, English was my third language. So born in Germany, my mum is from Brazil. So the reason I was able to learn how to speak right and speak as well was debating. I had to go to drama school when I was a little girl. But it's funny you talk about fitness coaches as well when it comes to learning how to sell and whatnot. There was, and I'm going to be completely honest, I was a fucking cunt when it came to myself as a coach when I was a fitness coach. You know, the booty photos, showing my tits and ass. And it wasn't only until like recently I really started to love selling, like really hands down, and connecting the dots of like witnessing my mum door knocking when we were young. You know, we didn't have a home when I was a little girl. And I really, really loved and valued her, because then we didn't have social media when she was obviously working. And being on the streets was a big thing for me as well, to learn perseverance and discipline. And for you, my friend, when it comes to, you know, you now speaking on the stage and going through the hardships you went through, has there ever been a time where stuff was going on and it was like, how the fuck am I going to get through this? How am I going to go on stage, speak to these people? Because that was what my mum used to do every single day. You know, she had hardships going on, and then she could just turn around and face life.
Never really so much on a stage, because so much of the work has already been done. So when you get like 1,000 people in a room, I'm like, I must have done something right this far. And I always think about the ticket price. So whichever audience it is, whether it's like, let's say B2C, £35, $70, or it's B2B, £150, $300. I get amped. I'm like, right, I've got 6 hours or I've got 2 hours to make them walk out of that room going, fuck me, that's the best £35 I've spent in a long time. So I get more motivated for that. But when it comes to kind of being bogged down, I remember when I first came to Sydney as a PT, I had 2,500 followers on Facebook. I actually didn't have a business Instagram when I came to Australia. I was laying behind this idea that I'm more of a Facebook kind of guy, because Facebook was my dominant platform in 2016. Then I was listening to Gary V, Crush It. I was walking on the Gold Coast. It was Schoolies. And I was like, this place is a shithole. I didn't realize what Schoolies was. And in it, there was a chapter and I was like, do you know what? I'm just being fucking lazy. I'm using this as an excuse. I'm writing this excuse. So I was already in Australia as like an online PT, and I had 2,500 on Facebook. And that was when I created my business Instagram account. I was like, nah, I'm going to manage 2 social media accounts. I'm going to do it. And then when I got down to Sydney, I needed a job. I was making about $1,000 a week online, but I was like, I need to go back to face. Like, I didn't actually see online as being a viable option. But when I joined Fitness First, George Street, CBD, it was fucking awful. Like, there were 32 PTs, and there were a few in there that were nice, but the majority of them were fucking cunts. And I couldn't believe that in the UK, there was like maybe 6 of us personal trainers, but we were like comrades. We were like, right, it's us versus the gym floor. It's us versus the market. We need to work together to dominate. Like, I'd say to one of the others, like, we go into the seminar this weekend. Yeah, cool. Let's get the train together. We'll go into London. We'll do this seminar on fat loss, and we'll come home. Then me and you are going to dominate the gym floor because the other 4 PTs aren't here. When I got to the city, like, first of all, there was no windows, which really bugged me. It's downstairs, fucking 3 floors. But then the participation rate, almost everyone had a PT. So almost every person that I was prospecting with, they were like, oh, I train with Andrew. Oh, I train with them. And then the PT would come to me in the room, like the PT room, and be like, don't talk to my clients. And I'd be like, it's my first day, mate. Like, you know, I was like, I'm obviously not trying to poach your clients. It's my first day as a trainer. And they were like really rude. And I remember like, I genuinely couldn't build my business there. So like, as someone who's like a business coach, or like someone that helps people within this realm, there was a time, March 15th, 2017, while I was in Australia Square in the city, I was sitting there eating sushi on my own. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, this is killing me. And the missing ingredient for so many people's success is like desperation. So like, I wasn't desperate in the sense that I like had a drug addiction or debt or like no family. My sense of desperation was if I don't pull something together, I've got to go home. Like I can't, do anything else apart from make money. But all the effort I was putting into the gym floor. Then I remember on the way back on Pitt Street, there's an Office Works. I got a whiteboard that I could stick to the wall and some markers. And I got a tripod for my iPhone. And I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go live on Facebook. And I was like, I'm going to have 10 minutes because I didn't have a camera. I didn't have like a laptop that could edit. I didn't know how to edit or any of those things. I was like, you've got 10 minutes to go ham on this fucking live. And then I realized that I could put a fraction of the effort in front of a camera than I was putting on the gym floor. And the returns of it were so much fucking more impressive because so much of the energy, the negativity that I was absorbing and the kind of bad vibes I was getting from the gym floor were really demotivating me. But then instead, if I put myself in front of a camera and then people would comment going, I needed to see this, or this really resonated with me, or this information is great for me. That was actually bringing me up. And looking back now, I remember like my housemates texted me on the 15th of March. I still remember it. Just before I bought the tripod and the markers, they were like, there was 3 of us. The other 2 lads were like, Smithy, how's work? And I was like, not good. And I was like, I had to read that message that I sent in the group chat to be like, fuck, I need to do something. But yeah, I remember that was probably the roughest part. But then that was March. In May, I remember walking into Fitness First and buying out the rest of my year's contract. And like, it was like, I was like, I'm not coming back here. Yeah, I was like, they were like, you need to pay your rent. I was like, cool, here you go. Here's a lump sum. I'm just going to come in here and film. And I remember the other PTs being like, do you not train people anymore? I was like, nah, I make way too much money online.
Thank you. Next. Can I just bring this up? Because obviously the guy that said to you, like, you can't take my clients, obviously he was threatened by you from the very beginning. Did you feel like that was a big element of proving people wrong? And I'll explain with my next little story there, because was that an element for you to kind of use that as motivation?
Yeah, definitely. Because what I did beforehand as well was there was a time that on Instagram you could tag your posts in a location. So I was tagging mine in Fitness First George Street for like 2 months before I started. I didn't realize the effect that would have on the other personal trainers before my first day. So they were literally sitting around at breakfast like, who the fuck is this guy? And people are like, I think he's starting here next month. And they were like, oh, he's a fucking cunt, whatever. But yeah, for sure. Because there was even a couple of clients that one of them was saying to me she couldn't afford to go to a festival. She wanted to go to Listen Out. She was like, I can't really afford it. So I was like, stop paying me. I was like, don't pay me for a few weeks, come in for your sessions, buy your festival ticket, and then we'll carry on as usual next week. And she came in the next week with like a Lululemon bag. And she was like, my friend works at this Lululemon. Instead of paying you $120, I bought you some stuff from Lululemon. And I was like, we can do this every session. So then I had clients bringing me gifts, and it would be little things like, oh, I knew you ran out of Nespresso pods. Oh, I knew you needed a toaster or whatever it was. Then all the other PTs after a while, the ones that had never spoken to me would come up and be like, what's going on? And I was like, this is sick. But do you know what? Actually, quickly, tangent. There's a guy in the gym called Graham Morris, and he's like an S&C coach, super smart, works with like professional rugby league players. And I remember like me and him got on quite well. And I was scooting upstairs at like 9 a.m. to go get my tripod out to do my little lives in the like George Street bit. And he goes, where are you going, cunt? And I said to him, like with a straight face, I went, I'm off to build the empire. And he went, you're such a cunt. And then about a year and a half later, we're in Surrey Hills. We're in like the Clock, and we're in a big group and Graham's there. And like 10 beers in, he turns to someone and goes, this fucking cunt said he was going to build the empire. And he went, he only fucking went and done it. I was like, that was the best. That was the best.
Just side note, when you said tripod and whiteboard, that's like the biggest entrepreneur's like best present. Has anyone brought anything like that for you as well?
No, that was me, because I don't think anyone would be like, oh, you need to get yourself in front of this whiteboard or
Say
whatever.
whiteboard again, please.
Like, yeah, the flat that I lived in, no one really understood this was my setup, but basically we had a ping pong table. We had like an awkward shaped front room. So we had a ping pong table in our flat. That's how loose it would get in there. We'd like drink a lot. So I had a tripod on a ping pong table up against a white wall with like a whiteboard that statically stuck to the wall. So it looked clean. So it almost looked like I was writing on the wall. And so I would just stand there, like sometimes in my boxers or a pair of budgies, doing these like bits of content, sticking them online. And it looked like I had a professional setup, but the truth was I was fucking standing next to a ping pong table. And like a year later, we had to move out of that flat. And at this point, I think I had maybe like 130,000 followers. And like, it was actually a bit emotional for me taking down the whiteboard from the wall, because I was like, I said to my friends, I was like, I came to Australia with nothing. When I started working, I was really struggling. I was like, we've only done a 1-year term in our lease. And now, you know, I'm pulling this whiteboard off the wall, and I flew first class home to see my parents 3 weeks ago. I was like, this one bit of brick and mortar on the fucking 4th floor of New Street in Bondi. I was like, this changed my life. And it was quite sad. When I left the flat, I was like, oh my God, that's like a magical room, even though we didn't have aircon or we didn't have like fucking fast Wi-Fi or whatever. To me, it was like almost traumatic having to leave there.
It's also like the beautiful comparison of like the first class flight versus like what everything you went through and how you started as well. I was at the hair salon before, and I was speaking to this beautiful lady. Her name's Nikki, and she's just recently done this huge like healing journey. And I was asking her advice around like, so I've only recently been making really good money, and that's me being completely honest. And my mum's been like the biggest support in my life. And I was asking this beautiful lady, what should I get my mum? And she just said time. She doesn't get to see her daughter. And for you, what's more important for you right now, time or money?
There has to be a good balance of both. But like I say, I'd never work more than maybe like 4 hours a day. But I also very much value my time in the sense that I said this to some PTs last weekend. I go, if you offered me $1,000 to train someone, I'd probably say no, because I could, even if I didn't make $1,000 with the hour, I could be more productive. So for instance, I could go make a YouTube video that only gets 30,000 views. And as far as revenue, might only make me $500. But that video could be compounding interest as a reason to maybe get 200 people to follow me. And then they could watch my next 10 videos. And then after that, they decide to click the link in my bio. Then they end up giving me their emails. So like, I would rather spend an hour putting things into my funnel for like sales and brand and all of those things than I would just to do it for money. So also something I've been delving into recently, I got tested for ADHD last week, and I got my provisional diagnosis for hyperactive and inattentive. Yeah. Now, because my life was so regimented for so long with PT, going into work, seeing people, and actually being so focused, because I do like 7 hours of PT a day, face to face, my brain never could get too fully distracted. But now, because I have maybe one thing in my diary a day, literally one thing a day. And I usually wake up to texts from, you've got a podcast tomorrow. Don't forget you've got this at 3, like this thing. But because of that, my brain wanders and gets so kind of like in these moods of in and out where time for me is a weird one, because I never know when I'm going to be productive. I never know when I'm not going to be productive. So when someone puts something in the diary for 3 p.m., it fucks me up, because I lose my natural peaks and troughs of productivity throughout the day, where sometimes it'll be 1 p.m. and I'll be like, right, I've got a great idea. Let me run with it. Other days it will come at 7 a.m. And then other days I'll start working at 7 p.m. But because of that, it's very difficult for me to give time to people in a business respect for too long, because if I'm sat in a meeting about something that's pretty unimportant and I just feel that I'm getting super motivated to be really creative, I'm like, oh, I've killed it. And then I get out of the meeting and I'm dead. And that's what it was like in my professional work life. But time to me is very important, because having time to myself, I can fully utilize it.
It's beautiful you say that as well, just because the hustle mentality has been, again, shifting as of late for anyone that has a business. Even for myself, I feel like my masculine energy is very like, you need to do this all the time, and there's structure and everything in my life. But it just goes to show that it's just more about being present and being intuitive with the decisions you make. So is that every day very different for you, or is it just take it as it comes? Wow.
It's chaotic, to be honest. Like, and I one thing I didn't realize till I had like a bit of a psych evaluation with the test was how much the people in my life contribute to managing like even my girlfriend will say this. She'll be like, in some respects, I've got superpowers. Then in other respects, I'm so fucking forgetful and borderline stupid. I'm like, what, it's Tuesday? Like, I'll do like a really complex edit that even videographers like would be like, oh, that's good level. But then I won't know what day it is. I sometimes stutter when I'm asked what year it is. It'd be like, oh yeah, 24th of the 5th. And I'm like, what year is it to someone? I'm like, this is the kind of shit that you're dealing with. But yeah, on other respects, like everyone around me kind of supports me with that, which is another reason why, you know, we spoke before about being in a relationship. It's really benefiting me because my manager, my business partner, and my girlfriend in some respects now prop up the areas of my life that I'm not so good at. And like you say there about having masculine energy, which is very probably like dopamine driven rewards, you know, even, and again, people can say that you're kind of gender profiling, but often these kind of drives to be entrepreneurial and to get money are often masculine because of that kind of role that men like to be in a providing situation. That's not to say women can't. It's just to say that not every woman probably feels that way. But yeah, I then very much appreciate my girlfriend's feminine roles, which is, you know, even something small like coming home and the bed's been changed. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I wasn't expecting that. And she like, I'll say, let me give you a hand next time. She's like, no, I really enjoy doing this. And I'm like, well, do you know what? I really enjoy going to work and like doing 7-hour talks. So it's great that people kind of express the gender roles, because gender roles aren't supposed to be oppressive. They're supposed to be synergistic. And I think so many people overlook that.
This just brings up so much because my partner and I, by the way, we started as a one-night stand. It was amazing. Very, very different and very unexpected too. And it's just nice to hear that you are in a relationship and you guys are bringing out the best of each other. It's funny you say that because my partner is a feminine type of man. And for a while there, like I've spoken about this on my podcast before, I didn't know if that's what I wanted for a really long time. And that was just basically because I used to always attract narcissistic men. And our relationship right now, it's funny you say that because he loves it when I make him dinner. And before that, for me, it was kind of like I was always just like work driven. This is what I'm here to do. I'm the money maker, da, 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 da. And as of late, I've just started to really pull back on seeing what's really important, and having a home cooked meal for him makes him feel more masculine, makes him feel more loved. And then he shows up in other parts in our relationship that just makes it really beautiful. Has there ever been any like balance in between you two with your relationship?
Not really, because my girlfriend comes from a very competitive sporting background. She appreciates my competitive streaks. And I think as well, one thing that I've always really struggled with is impulsivity, where when I get an idea or a creative idea, I have to produce it. I'm one of the only people that I'll have the inception of the idea, the filming, the editing, and I'll put it out by 4 p.m. So the reason that I was like, I want to do the podcast today before 10 is so that between 10 and 11, I can film. Between 11 and 12, I can train. Between 12 and 1, I can come home and see my missus for a bit. Then between 1 and 3, I'm going to get the edit finished so that I can have it all its checks to go out by 4. And then the UK wakes up. So
there's
like,
the structure.
I've had people before say like, why don't you post that tomorrow? Then get someone to go into the edit and maybe spruce it up. I'm like, I don't fucking want it out tomorrow. I want it out today. Like my impulsivity is the fucking worst. But again, a lot of previous relationships, for instance, I would wake up and I'd get on with work straight away. And a lot of women that I dated before saw that as the work being more important than them, when really I actually have to do certain things to allow my brain to relax so that I can be present with people. And even there were times that I would go for breakfast because they wanted to, not because I wanted to. And I'd be sat there and halfway through, they were like, I'm fucking out of here. They're like, you're not even listening. Like you don't want to be here. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be here. I want to be doing other stuff. So I'm actually in a relationship now with my partner's understanding of how my brain works. And she's like, go do your thing. Then when I come back, I'm super relaxed. When I've got that video scheduled to go out, and it's not because the video is more important. It's just taking up a lot of processing time in my mind. And until I do it, I can't fully be present. And one thing that I thought I was just fucking broken for loads of years, or, you know, that maybe whatever it was, but one of the biggest kind of key bits of advice I give to people in relationships is just having someone that understands how you work.
I have to say, I don't know if this makes sense, but it sounds like your brain is a beautiful chaos and you've seen the power of it and the superpower in everything you do. Was there ever a time you thought there was something wrong with you, or if you saw it as weakness or anything like that, or different?
Yeah, so I said this the other day, and when I heard it, I thought that's fucking good. At 23, if you'd given me a pill to make it go away, I would have taken it, because at 23, it would have been the sole reason that I hadn't held down a job or succeeded in anything in life. Because I failed school, I failed college, I failed uni, I failed my first 3 proper jobs because I couldn't hold them down for like anywhere near a year. But then at 33, I wouldn't touch the pill because it was the reason that I was the most successful, probably one of the most successful ever to do what I did as my job. It was just harnessing the way my mind works rather than it was like trying to put a triangle into a square. You know, it just was never gonna work. Like you say, I'm interested to try medication let's say I've got the provisional diagnosis, say I get the full diagnosis, let's say I go to see a psychiatrist. I don't really want to take meds, but I wouldn't mind seeing what it's like, because some people experience calmness. And I actually, at the assessment, they were saying how much I'm already managing my symptoms. I use stimulants a lot. I've dabbled with like modafinil, nootropics, things like that to try and get like that focus. But sometimes it's a bit annoying because I'll be driving and I'll get ideas that I have to. So I was driving yesterday, right? Imagine this. Someone in a podcast said something. I think they said something about like sailing into a headwind. And I was like, how do sailboats work? Right? Because wind can only go in one direction. And I was like, so how the fuck? No, they were talking about Europeans coming to South America. So in my head, I was like, how long did it take and how did they do it? Because the Vikings had oars and they used to paddle, right? Because I've been watching Vikings. But then I had to pull over. I knew I was going to pull over and get something to eat from a petrol station anyway. I go onto YouTube. I have to watch a 9-minute video about how the physics of sailing works. I have to. And I was like, James, don't do this. I was like, I have to know. And the week before, it was understanding how solar panels work. The week before, it was understanding how sun cream works. All of these things. Once that inception comes into the mind, I can't relax. Did you know that boats can move forward even if a wind is coming into them? So they can be facing a headwind and they can create downward movement from like the sails that creates pressure and moves the boat forward.
Yeah. What time of the night was like, this as well?
You get taught this at school. You get taught about Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn having a head chopped off, but they don't teach you about anything that's important. So yeah, there it is. So like, but people again, for years won't think I'm listening because they will say something, then my mind will go to somewhere else, then it'll go to somewhere else, then it'll come up with a question. So they might go, yeah, you know, I was in Europe the other day, and then it reminded me of the podcast about the Europeans going to South America. And I'm like, how do sailboats work? And they go, oh, you're not fucking listening to me. But the issue is I am listening. I'm just somewhere else already. Or, I struggle with people's names as well. I know everyone's pretty bad at remembering names, but I don't hold that much importance to people's names when I meet them. I'm sorry, I just don't. Like, if I'm meeting Todd for the first time, I don't care, but I know that you got your t-shirt from General Pants, and I'm already thinking about whether or not you got the Tommy t-shirt before everyone had it, or you got it after everyone had it. And I'm already in a deep dive then going, what about your shoes? Yeah, you know, Reebok Classics. Is he a man that, you know, is on a budget, or is he gone the other way where he could afford Gucci shoes, but it's wearing Reebok? So I'm already into the important stuff. And then I look back up, like, I've got no idea who this guy, what his name is. But I've already been assessing what he's wearing for the last 3 minutes in my head. So yeah, I think that the chaos is a very good way to explain it. But sometimes it's good.
I must be doing something really good for this episode to be doing how it's going right now. So I appreciate that. My brother was diagnosed late with Asperger's, and there was a massive guilt for me that I was carrying because growing up, we were obviously very different, but I couldn't understand him as a person. I used to make him feel bad for, you know, not saying hi to people, being socially awkward. And I tell you now, my brother's probably one of the most gifted person I've ever met. He can play any type of instrument, piano. He wants to be a film composer, so he's very much into like the Marvel music. And when he was diagnosed, probably like 5 years ago, he was like, it felt good for him to have answers for him. And now it's become his superpower. And everything you've just said to me, I just think it's fucking amazing. Seriously, like there needs to be more people like yourself that can show people that if you're different, it becomes your superpower regardless.
So like, I was having a mushroom trip in Bondi.
You need to let me know next time.
We went to, yeah, it was actually unreal. Like I always get a bit nervous. Then when it hits, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. We went to like Harris Farms and we got loads of fruit. When we started eating the fruit, I said to someone, I hate melon. All melon. I just hate it. I wish I didn't. And my friend Charles was like, I can't believe that you don't like melon. But then he doesn't like pineapple. And deep on mushrooms, I was like, this is the beautiful thing, guys, because if we all liked the same fruit, then there would be all of the same stuff left over. The reason we're going to finish this platter is because we're all uniquely different. I was like, isn't that beautiful going through it? Like, but then from like, I always think of us as like tribal mentality, primitive human beings. You need overconfident people. You need underconfident people. You need narcissists. You need arrogant people. You need, Asperger's, probably autistic spectrum. You need ADHD spectrum. You need a perfect mix of all people, because you have the creatives, then you have the people that can focus, then you have the people that can do all these things. And like, this is the problem I see with conglomerates and corporate world and all of this. So let's say at 34, people go, let's say, James, you have a great creative mind, let's say, to obtain net 4 million followers in like 9 years is pretty impressive. It's only taken me, but anyway, at 23, I was getting told to shut the fuck up. Because whenever I tried to use my creative brain in a work setting, they were like, you've worked here 6 months, shut the fuck up. So if you try and be creative as a young person, you cannot express that, right? So the majority of people now between 19 and 25 are not at the career responsibility to express their skill set. So like, let's say your brother was in a position where he goes, actually, I've been looking at the data, and I think they go, mate, you're on 40K a year, shut up. You know what I mean? Like for me, I go, hey guys, we could do this. Shut up. So I feel like so many people with their skill sets are being suppressed in their workplace, and instead they're being asked to conform to the norm, which made me feel like my blood was boiling. And I think the better maybe older generations can appreciate these idiosyncrasies between people, that their shortcomings, if someone had said to me in the sales like workplace, hey mate, you've got a really short attention span, we're going to give you flexible hours where you come in and you leave whenever you want. Like I would have done twice as many sales. But the fact that they used to make me sit there all day, or like, I remember this guy called Frank that I used to work with in the sales center. He made the least calls out of everyone, but had the highest sales. And he would sit there and be like, why are you getting these young guys to make 100 phone calls a day? Because he's like, so much of the system for so many people is broken, and no one can really express their skill sets in like the right way. And I think that's why, and I can't believe that personal trainers, let's say, for instance, so many of them don't appreciate that. They're in a position where if you're an introvert, you can express yourself that way. If you're an extrovert, you can express yourself that way. They're one of the only professions that can determine how much money they fucking make. Like when I get a room full of PTs, I go, guys, cost of living crisis, sure. You cunts get to decide how much money you make a year. No one else can do that. When a PT's interest rates go up on their mortgage, they can do more hours, or they can increase their rates, or they can have a larger offering, whatever it is. Someone who's a school teacher can't do that. I think it's such a shame that people don't appreciate the.
I think you're right. I feel like a lot of people are either privileged or fucking lazy, especially in the PT world and the fitness space. Do you feel right now people you've obviously seen such a change already, like how people are working then versus now? Do you feel like people are putting more time and effort into their business, or they're probably showing up more on social media pretending that they have it all?
Do you know what? It's hard because I don't live their lives, but someone asked me on a podcast, actually Morgan yesterday, he said to me, what is like the missing ingredient? Like, what is it that people haven't got? And I was like, effort. Like, no matter where I look, I see like a lack of effort. And again, like some PTs that I spoke to in Melbourne the other week, they work for health clubs and they end up taking like $40 home an hour. And I was like, that's not enough. Like, it's not enough. And they're like, oh, if I start in a new gym, I've got to build a client base again. I'm like, yeah, that's the fucking point. You got to go do it. But so many young people now are avoiding effort. And I think because social media makes it seem like people aren't working hard. Because my business partner told me this actually. He goes, the people working the hardest will never show you how hard they're working. It's like a flex, right? Not to show them. And again, we're talking about like differences. Me and my business partner, we're both called James. And I think it was Darren Brown who, he had this thing where once, he's like a magician in the UK. If people have the same initials as you, you're more likely to get on with them. Can't remember, but it's something weird like that, right? I don't know if you're into that spiritual shit, but we're both called James. We're both the initials JS. We're similar ages. We're both British. But we are similar in some respects, but we're polar opposites. And when we set up our business, we sat with a Big Four accountant in Sydney. There's a team of like 4 pretty switched on people at this top 4 accountants. They look at us, they go, you two are perfect. They go, you're complete fucking opposites. They're like, I'm like, let's spend the money. He's like, let's save the money. I'm like, let's do this. He's like, let's not do this. I'm like, oh, we can skip that. He's like, no, that's illegal. You know, he's the one that's like, oh, we need to spend 10 grand on a privacy policy and terms and conditions. I'm like, nah, you know, like I'm the reckless one. He's the sensible one. I do the social media. He does the back end payroll, HR and app development. So like, yeah, I think coming back to that point of having people of difference, if anyone from a business standpoint wanted a bad idea, is to go into business with people that just like you.
So how do you balance that between you two when it comes to making decisions? Toss a coin.
To be honest, I actually let him do it. You know, I let him do it blindly. I'd rather be, and we get on well to the extent that we've never actually argued. Probably the same. For any relationship for me to get on with, whether business or personal, I can't have arguing. And sometimes I just take his advice as best. And sometimes it's not worked out, but then he'll figure it out and he'll course correct as we go along. And if we make mistakes as a business, we ride it through. As long as we're profitable, it's probably our biggest superpower. We've got a good client base. We haven't made crazy profits the last few years, but we're making money enough to pay our salary. And for us, that's fine. We probably haven't adapted quick enough to the cost of living crisis. But it's okay. I'm like, I don't look at the books. This is one thing I can't look. If I saw what we spent on app development, I'd cry. So instead, I just don't look. And sometimes I'm like, why is our tax bill so high? He's like, yeah, we're making all right money. I'm like, okay. From now on, I'm like, I don't want to know. App development cost, don't want to know. But he'll give me gentle nudges if we need to go full steam ahead or when we're okay. We get on.
Going back to your incredible mind when it comes to content creation. I did a post, you'd appreciate this, and that was no one remembers their vanilla sex experience, but they'll remember their 20 orgasms or being tied to the bed. And it's the same with your content. If it's boring, if it's like everyone else, no one's going to remember you. How did you start to really see, well, one, how important content is and how to be, I guess, different to everyone else? I know you repurpose it and I believe that's important, but you've just taken it to another level and I absolutely fucking love it. Queen, how often have you said, I spent my whole life studying, I've been to school my whole life, and I've actually learned nothing that teaches me the tools and strategies to build a successful business in the outside world. You've probably spent thousands of dollars on courses, or you've heard fake news from business gurus, or you've gone to business school. Well, I'm here to give this incredible news to everyone here right now that this is Queen Stream University. Get out of debt and actually start making money in the online space, knowing and having the foundations to build a successful business. Now I'm talking because I have gone through the trenches. I have been a fitness coach, built my online business as a pro athlete, and now I am a business coach. You'll go from having absolutely no idea what your business is through, in the 8 weeks, learn the foundations of knowing what your purpose is, your vision and mission, and also understanding your business values with the execution to know what that business is. You'll also learn branding, social media, content strategy, marketing, and more importantly, how to sell. With Queen Stream University, it'll cut out the bullshit and remove all the fluff and get you working specifically on your business so you can execute this in 8 weeks to get ready to launch. Why I've created this Queen Stream University, I wanted you to have something where you get to access something straight away, where you get to fast track your growth, as well as remove any doubt, any overwhelming sensation or stress, or the question that everyone seems to ask, where do I begin? With Queen Stream University, you'll be able to build wealth, freedom, and at the end of the day, be an entrepreneur and be able to say, I have finally built my own thing, my own business. And I've stopped making money for someone else, and I'm now making money for my own empire. Queen Stream University.
So I think I'm quite good at looking, so let's bring it into a sexual context, like you said there. So as a guy, the best thing you can do is to ask someone what they like. Otherwise, you could be spending a lot of time in the bedroom trying to figure it out, and asking is your best bet, right? Second of all, when you try something out, you've then got to check the response to see whether or not it was well received. Right?
How was I?
Yeah, or even during, let's say you're trying something, you might be doing a reach around, you might look at the facial expression, see, are they enjoying this or not? So with content, it's the same. Sometimes I would dial up facetiousness how did it do? Dial up sarcasm. I might dial up really being abrupt in the beginning. I might try. Now I'm really focusing on those first 5 seconds are really important as everyone's learning content. But then sometimes starting a video, we're going, oh, fucking hell. Will get me a way better, let's say, engagement rate than starting a video with, did you know? Or 7 things you didn't know about this. But I'm always constantly trying things out. And so people need to vary their approach. I found out by accident. I did a live video when I was pissed off about something and did way better. And I was like, I have to look at that and go, why is that? Was it the subject or was it because of my emotional level behind it? A lot of people, in a bid not to come across nervous, come across unbothered. And they're like, oh, well, the thing about branched chain amino acids is that, and actually the most knowledgeable people in the business are actually quite dull people because they're very evidence, numbers, data, research driven. So a lot of the time I was like, okay, what kind of personalities do people like on social media they're drawn to? How can I find the gap in between to be the person that can be entertaining, but also get the point across? And I actually do this a lot with the live shows. So with the book tours that we do and the touring model behind that, I'm like, TED Talks are great. The reason people don't watch TED Talks is they get boring. So people watch stand-up more than they watch TED Talks, although they know the values in the TED Talk, not in the stand-up. So I was like, how can we mix the two together? And that's probably one of our like beautiful parts of the touring model is, for instance, the last tour was called The C Word and the book was about confidence. But when we start the talk, I talk about the word cunt. And I go, I know a lot of you don't like the word cunt. And, I probably use the word cunt 100 times. And I'm like, yeah, we've got time. I'm like, let's talk about the word cunt. I'm like, first originates in 13th century linguistic journals, and it was used as part of the anatomy of the human body. Prick was the word used for penis, and cunt was the word used for for the vagina. And then I go, well, actually, ladies, those of you that are like bothered about it, I'm like, we have the vagina and then we have the vulva. And a lot of people actually misinterpret the both. But the word cunt is actually inclusive if you think about it, because it encompasses both. So I'm like, cunt is an inclusive word. Where was it first seen? Oh, there was a lane in London called Grope Cunt Lane, prostitution area. And I'm like, was it named after the lane or was the lane named after the prostitution? Anyway, we're getting distracted. And like, then I would get into, it'd be 10 minutes in. I've just been talking about the word cunt and how, if anything, it's a good word in the Southern Hemisphere. Like, how is this word that's a compliment to? So then I get into it and I'm like, okay, guys, now we're going to get into the sensible part of the talk. But then I'll move into the next segment of the talk and I go, why shouldn't you masturbate before a date? Post nut clarity. And I'll take people on this journey of when I was 25 and I wasn't going on enough dates. It's because at 3 p.m. I'd bust out a wank thinking that I would recover and I would still want to go on the date. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, James, have the wank, because then you'll go into this date with a clear head. She'll say to you, I'm not sleeping with you tonight. And you will genuinely mean it when you look her in the eyes and go, good. That's okay. But then what happens is at 3 minutes past 3, I'm cancelling the date because I've got post-nut clarity and I'm thinking, I don't want to meet this person. I could stay in and play. So suddenly like I'm going through these like different parts of like entertainment and information, and kind of that to me is something that can help people learn. And actually thinking about it, the people I learn from the best do the same. So that's really the content angle. And I've actually been spending more time researching people that are doing it better than me. So I look at people doing it better, look at people crushing it. And instead of just like admiring it, I'm like, why? What are they doing? How are they doing it? I'm trying to imitate that more in my own content.
So YouTube's your biggest focus right now, because obviously you're quite happy. Well, I mean, there's always room for improvement, area of growth, but that's your main focus right now.
Yeah, because if you have to make content for YouTube, it has to be fucking good. And if it's not, it will die. So there's pressure on to do it. Where on TikTok, you could get your dog to catch an egg in its mouth and it'll fucking get 1 million views. So like the level of content has to be a lot higher. The quality of production has to be higher. Not only that, right? If I go ham trying to get something to dominate on YouTube, I put a 9.5 minute YouTube video on TikTok and it got 300,000 views. So like content is never too long. It can only be too boring. And that's what I've come to realize. People are like, 6 minutes is too long for a TikTok. I'm like, if it's boring, it is. But so I can repurpose these bits of content for everywhere else. And even if I don't, that's fine. But this is the thing I came to realize. I wanted to build my YouTube up. I actually invited Derek from More Plates, More Dates on my pod. And he politely aired me because I've got no YouTube presence. And I was like, fair enough. So I'm going to build up my YouTube. When I get to 1 million, I'm going to invite him on again. And my opening is going to be like, thank you. Thank you for the rejection. Because that hurt.
You've worked
and because
hard.
it hurt, you made me a better person. So like So I'm going to grow this cunt to the point that he actually messages me going, let's do that podcast. Right. So that's part of my sick and twisted mentality.
Well, I did send you an email about anal plugs. I'm like, how can I get James's attention?
But I was like, so I started like dabbling back in YouTube, and my videos are getting like 5,000 views. Right. And I said to myself, James, you got 4 million followers, but 0.1% are watching your YouTube. And then I came to realize I follow 2,500 people. How many of their YouTube do I watch? Maybe 5. So I was like, the ultimate flex now isn't how many people follow you. It's how many people watch your content when you put it out there. So now that's my flex. And I want to grow that. I've never had a long form video get 1 million views. And when I do, I'll celebrate, and then I'll feel numb to it.
When you
again.
reach out to people to jump on your podcast, have you ever said anything different to get their attention, or are you pretty much like, hey, would you like to come on?
Yeah, I'm usually pretty relaxed with it. I usually punch at the right weight. You know, I don't punch up that much because I don't like the rejection. It hurts. But it goes all right.
I have to ask, just because we're wrapping up to nearly an hour, and this has been fucking amazing. I have two questions for you. First, how do you want everyone to remember you as?
I've often said this, and I've heard other people say it, but I probably heard it from someone saying it where they were like, to leave the fitness industry in a better place than they found it. But you know what? Probably just someone, I said this in a podcast yesterday. Someone was like, comparing me to Jay Shetty. And I was like, look, Jay Shetty makes more money than me, sells more books than me, gets more views than me, has more followers than me. But given the opportunity, if you were having a party and you only had one spot left and you could invite one of us, I would always hope to be remembered as the person you invite to a party. Like, imagine that's it. Because I think that although I lose just as many followers as I gain on like a weekly basis, if I grow by 5,000, I lose 4,500. I still am proud to the fact that if you invite me to your party, I'll do a shoey, I will straight arm a drink, I'll do a no-handed mangina. And I just don't think many people in the fitness industry could proudly do a no-handed mangina in front of a group of strangers. And that's how I'd like to be. So first of all, you got to create momentum. So your dick and balls are flapping forwards and backwards. Then when your dick and balls are on the posterior trajectory, then clamp your thighs closed. And then you lift up your top. And
I have visuals now. Yeah. Wow.
I've done that like in Milan in front of like 100 people. It's not, I'm not, do you know what? I am proud of it.
Can I ask, can we make a promise when I get my events out there, would you come and do that for my event?
For the man, not now. I've got a missus. That'll be inappropriate. You missed your chance. I did that for 15 years. I did that for 15 years playing rugby. I got to put that behind me now because someone will get a video of that. That'd probably be my first video. Then you can invite that guy. Hey, I made it.
And Legend, again, this has been absolutely amazing. I always ask the last question, which is if you were to give the keys to the Queendom, that one key, that one advice to the listeners, it can be anything. What would it be?
I'm going to take this one from Andrew Tate.
What is it?
So it's very rare that you see someone give everything they have and work as hard as they possibly can and not succeed. It's almost impossible that you work your hardest and give it your all and fail. That never happens. Never happens. And when people can understand that, there's not one person in history that gave it everything they could and failed, that they'll understand that it's usually just effort that is the missing ingredient.
And that's James Smith, everyone. Thank you so much, you fucking amazing cunt of a legend. What's happening in the world of you right now that everyone can obviously be in touch with, find you? Yeah.
Just watch a YouTube video. Just watch one. Anyone at random. And if I haven't captured you, fair enough. But if I do, welcome to the honey trap.
This is Keys to the Queendom. I am Tamara, your host. Thank you.